Mike's growing insistence on spending alone time with Ally's toddler, Kaylee, began to stir feelings of discomfort in Ally. As Mike's interest in her daughter seemed to intensify quickly, Ally found herself grappling with unease. Deciding to take proactive steps, Ally discreetly installed a hidden camera in the living room, a move she kept secret from everyone. Although she had always hoped that her husband and daughter would form a close bond after they married, the recent shifts in behavior left her uncertain about how to manage the situation. Despite not having children of his own, Mike had always shown a profound affection for kids. He showered his 5 nieces and nephews with endless love and attention, earning him the title of the favorite uncle. Initially, Ally was concerned about Mike's desire to spend more time with Kaylee, wondering whether her worries were justified or merely instinctual. Forming a bond with a stepchild is typically seen as normal for a stepfather. Yet alarm bells started ringing for Ally when Mike expressed a desire for private time with Kaylee. Before Mike entered her life, Ally was a single mother who had been abandoned by her husband, leaving her and the baby with nothing. Her first impression of Mike was that he was the kindest man she had ever met. A stark contrast to her ex. A work meeting brought them together, and Ally quickly fell for Mike. They connected instantly and got engaged soon after, despite her initial nerves about revealing she had a child. Fearing that most men would shy away from a woman with baggage, Ally was pleasantly surprised. Mike's reaction was nothing but warm. A calm smile spread across his face as he expressed his eagerness to meet Kaylee. It was clear to Ally that he had a genuine love for children, and her relief was immense. In her eyes, Mike was truly exceptional, and she didn't want anything to ruin their relationship. 6 months later, Ally and Mike got married in a whirlwind of joy, and it was the happiest Ally had ever been. They moved from Ally and Kaylee's small apartment into Mike's spacious house, where Kaylee was thrilled to have her own room in their new 3-bedroom home. Everything seemed to be going well until Mike made a request that caught Ally off guard. He expressed a wish to spend some one-on-one time with Kaylee to strengthen their bond as stepfather and stepdaughter. Despite their already close relationship, this request would set the stage for the unfolding events and Ally's growing apprehensions. Initially, the idea seemed perfect to Ally. Despite being married to Mike, Kaylee wasn't particularly fond of him and often refrained from engaging in playtime activities with him. This was somewhat perplexing to Ally because Kaylee was typically an exuberant little girl who loved interacting with her aunts and uncles. However, she consistently resisted playing with Mike. Mike was feeling the strain of this distant relationship more acutely than he had anticipated. He confessed that his objective was to foster a meaningful father-daughter bond with Kaylee. Ally knew that for her to trust Mike in a paternal role, it was crucial they develop a genuine connection. Initially, Ally was taken aback by Mike's keen interest in spending time with Kaylee. His enthusiasm, while admirable, also sparked a hint of suspicion in her. Ally was slightly uneasy about pushing the situation. Ultimately, she decided to give Mike and Kaylee some space to bond and arranged for them to spend time together while she met up with friends for lunch. She was hopeful, seeing all the thoughtful activities Mike had planned. However, upon returning home after her day out, Ally was met with a scene of disarray. The house looked as though a tornado had swept through, and Kaylee was inconsolably crying. Mike appeared bewildered and frantic as he tried to tidy up the scattered toys. Ally's heart sank. Something was clearly wrong. What's going on here? What happened? Ally urgently inquired as she scooped Kaylee into her arms. Mike, looking flustered, could only say that Kaylee had suddenly begun crying, and he was at a loss about how to comfort her. Ally wasn't satisfied with Mike's explanation and gently prodded Kaylee for information. The 2 words Kaylee whispered through her tears, "Our secret," sent a chill down Ally's spine. Confusion and concern washed over her as she looked at her daughter, trying to decipher the meaning behind those words. When she glanced up at Mike, his expression resembled that of a deer caught in headlights, intensifying her worry that he might be concealing something serious from her. The following weekend, Mike expressed a desire to spend more time with Kaylee, hoping to engage in the fun activities they had missed. Despite her initial reservations and the unsettling feeling something was amiss, Ally found herself torn between her desire for her husband and daughter to bond and the lingering doubts fueled by the previous incident. Ally had initially agreed, albeit with some hesitation, hoping that Mike's intentions were genuinely aimed at strengthening their familial bonds. As the days transitioned into weeks, Ally observed that Kaylee, who was once bubbly and carefree, began to appear more withdrawn and reserved, especially after spending time alone with Mike. Concerned by these changes, Ally felt compelled to take decisive action to uncover the truth behind her daughter's altered demeanor. To put her mind at ease, Ally invested in a sophisticated home security system, which she discreetly installed in the living room while Mike was at work. She wondered if the hidden camera would unveil the root of Kaylee's newfound unhappiness. Only time would reveal the answers she desperately sought. That weekend, instead of going out with friends as usual, Ally chose to visit a local coffee shop. There, she pretended to work on her laptop but was, in reality, anxiously watching the live footage streaming from her home. She was determined to get some clarity on the situation. Initially, the footage displayed heartwarming scenes of Mike and Kaylee making breakfast together and watching cartoons, seeming to share genuine moments of joy and connection. Ally was touched to see them bonding. She even caught a glimpse of Kaylee laughing as Mike playfully made funny faces. However, a sense of mystery lingered as Kaylee mentioned a secret to Mike. Subsequently, Mike lifted Kaylee in his arms, and they both headed into the bedroom, leaving the television running in the living room. This shift made Ally uneasy, as she had hoped they would remain within the camera's view. Driven by a mix of concern and urgency, Ally closed her laptop and rushed home, feeling an instinctive need to be there. She drove swiftly, her mind racing with scenarios. Upon arriving, she parked quietly, striving not to alert Mike of her presence. As she approached the house, the sound of loud, cheerful music, reminiscent of the type Kaylee adored from her favorite movies, filled the air. Taking a deep breath, Ally tiptoed towards the window, navigating through the shrubs that slightly obstructed her view. Peering through, her anxiety turned to astonishment and then relief. There in the living room, Mike and Kaylee were joyously dancing around, both dressed in princess costumes, play-acting scenes from one of Kaylee's beloved films. The sight was both endearing and reassuring, dispelling the worries that had plagued Ally. It was clear that the secret Kaylee had mentioned was simply the innocent fun of their costume play, a special moment between her and Mike that she wanted to keep as a delightful surprise. At Disney, cartoon enthusiast Ally couldn't contain her tears as they streamed down her cheeks. It was an overwhelmingly heartwarming sight for her. Kaylee had never seemed as jubilant as she did at that moment. Despite the tears, a smile broke through on Ally's face as she observed the heartwarming scene that unfolded before her. It turned out that Mike had orchestrated a surprise princess tea party for Kaylee, complete with costumes and her favorite Disney character dolls. This was the secret behind the earlier chaos, which had been the result of their enthusiastic dance party. A wave of gratitude and relief swept through Ally, feeling thankful for the man who had not only embraced her daughter but had also created such an enchanting experience for her. However, her relief was tinged with a touch of guilt for having questioned Mike's motives. Overcome with various emotions, Ally decided to step inside and participate in the impromptu princess tea party. Upon seeing her, Mike's face showed a palpable sense of relief. Kaylee, on the other hand, lit up with happiness at the sight of her mother. Mike took a moment to share that his aim was to surprise them both, hoping to forge a cherished memory that would strengthen their relationship. He admitted to feeling somewhat distant from Kaylee and was looking for ways to close that gap. Ally was touched by the honesty in Mike's expression, and her heart swelled with love for the man who consistently demonstrated his affection for her and her daughter. She expressed regret for her earlier suspicions and disclosed the secret of the hidden camera, sharing her apprehensions. Mike, empathizing with her concerns, offered his forgiveness, understanding that it was instinctual for a parent to be protective. He reassured her that his intentions were always sincere and that his love for her and Kaylee was profound. The trio spent the remainder of the day engulfed in laughter and joy, creating additional memories that would further cement the bonds of their evolving family. This incident served as a poignant lesson for Ally to trust in the love she shared with Mike and to communicate her fears openly. Ultimately, the hidden camera, initially installed out of worry, became a mechanism that cleared misunderstandings and deepened the trust between Ally and Mike. The family learned the value of open communication and empathy, setting the foundation for a future rich with love and collective experiences. As time went on, Ally, Mike, and Kaylee grew closer as a family. Mike's efforts to bond with Kaylee became increasingly heartfelt and regular. The Princess Tea Party became a treasured recollection, often relived through family photos and shared anecdotes. Ally realized that sometimes the most heartfelt surprises arise from genuine intentions. By trusting Mike and giving him the opportunity to connect with Kaylee, she had inadvertently laid the groundwork for wonderful moments that would define their family life. Ally and Mike established a strong co-parenting relationship, managing both the difficulties and joys of raising Kaylee as a team. Initially, Ally was plagued by uncertainties and fears, but these gradually morphed into a profound respect for Mike. He not only embraced her as she was but also eagerly took on the role of a father figure to her daughter. With the loving support and guidance of her mother and stepfather, Kaylee thrived. The once shy and cautious girl transformed into a vibrant and self-assured young woman. It seemed that a Princess Tea Party had been a crucial turning point in their relationship, signaling the beginning of a deep and enduring connection. As the years went by, the family created endless memories together, spanning from major celebrations and festive holidays to simple daily interactions. Ally would often review the footage from the hidden camera, not to recall her initial reservations but to celebrate the robust love they shared and the efforts they made to nurture a joyful family environment, living out their unique fairy tale. Ally, Mike, and Kaylee faced challenges and unexpected joys, all leading to their own version of a happily ever after that they had lovingly crafted together. After watching this story, how do you feel? Feel free to share with us in the comments section below. And then there is another similar warm story. Let's continue to see. For 4 Canadian youths, the evening began as a typical session at their improvised skate park in a subterranean parking lot. They were thoroughly enjoying their skateboarding maneuvers. Yet, as the evening progressed, they realized it was nearly time to return home. Their departure, however, took a surprising twist as they were leaving the lot. A troubling scene stopped them in their tracks. A young woman and 2 older men were walking across the lawn toward the garage. The woman seemed to be in distress, and one of the men, who was initially walking behind her, became noticeably more aggressive upon seeing the boys. Although the situation was odd, it didn't immediately concern the boys, until the woman started to scream and shout, clearly trying to get away. Carson Wright, one of the skaters, recalled that seeing the woman's panic was what escalated their suspicion. The boys then turned their attention to the men, insisting on an explanation for the disturbing events unfolding before them. When confronted, the larger man asserted he was the woman's father. Believing perhaps the woman was in trouble for some misdeed and noticing that she didn't dispute the man's claim or seek assistance, the boys at first chose to step away. However, something about the ordeal didn't sit right with them. It was later than they had intended to stay, and as they began to pack up their equipment, they found it easy to accept the man's assertion. Since the woman voiced no objections, there seemed little to challenge at the time. Yet, they couldn't dismiss a lingering unease that something was off. As they departed, they noticed the woman appeared to be under the influence, which intensified their worries about the earlier altercation. They continued to question whether they had been too quick to accept the man's explanation. His confident, almost arrogant demeanor now appeared suspicious. Do fathers really behave in such a manner? An especially troubling observation then occurred to them. Carson noted that the woman was all scuffed up and dirty, suggesting she had been struggling. The man abruptly concluded the conversation by lifting her over his shoulder in a way that seemed anything but fatherly. This action led the boys to second-guess the entire episode once more. Realizing that the woman might have indeed needed their help, they left the scene with heavy hearts and unresolved feelings, troubled by the thought that they might have witnessed something far more serious than a mere familial dispute. She felt as awkward and out of place as a sack of potatoes. Yet she continued to fend off his unwelcome attention. At the same time, a powerful urge tugged at the group of boys, compelling them to revisit the site they had just departed. They were aware that ignoring their instincts would lead to self-reproach. As they reflected on the event, the situation seemed increasingly incongruent. They started to question if the trio they had observed earlier even knew one another or what their true purpose was for congregating near an underground parking lot at such a strange time. A feeling of foreboding simultaneously overwhelmed all four of them. There had to be a deeper, more sinister element to the story than they had initially thought. Driven by this disturbing idea, the boys hastened their steps, hurrying back to the parking lot in hopes that they were not too late. Even though the unfolding scene was hard to believe. As Wright had mentioned, you don't want to think the worst of someone. You try to dismiss the bad and hold on to hope. Yet, their instincts prevented them from simply dismissing their concerns. Upon their return to the parking lot, the three individuals they were searching for had disappeared. It didn't take long for the boys to conclude that if they were not outside, they must be inside. What the boys didn't grasp was that the situation involved far more complexities than they could see, particularly regarding the two men. As the four friends entered the underground parking of the Chinook Center, they unwittingly delved into a more sinister aspect of Calgary. There was no going back. Beneath the polished surface of the upscale mall lay a serious issue brewing within the community, an issue much more significant and ominous than the boys had ever anticipated. Officer Arthur L. Donor had been addressing a surge in criminal activities in southwest Calgary. Despite his numerous stings and investigations, his efforts had mostly been in vain. The gang activity in the area had intensified to alarming levels. It was like combating a mythical creature. Every time he managed to apprehend one gang member, two more would appear as if from nowhere. Unbeknownst to him, for skateboarders were about to confront this hydra on their own. The boys proceeded slowly, descending into the shadowy depths below the Chinook Center. They knew today the security guards were off duty. Their prior reconnaissance had confirmed as much, sparking their excitement as they grabbed their skateboards that afternoon. The underground parking lot presented itself as an ideal spot for their antics. Regrettably, the individuals they were intrigued by were also cognizant of this fact. Surveillance footage later showed these men meandering through the parking bays, apparently on a search, accompanied by a girl. On this unusually silent day, the boys ventured into the poorly lit subterranean parking area. Initially, they explored behind the sparse vehicles present, yet found no trace of the trio they sought. After minutes of vain search, they moved towards the stairwell, clinging to a slim hope of not encountering what they dreaded might be there. The atmosphere was increasingly tense and uncomfortable. Arnold hesitated, his hand on the door handle, sharing a resolute look with his companions, signaling readiness for what might be beyond. With a quick tug, he opened the door. Inside the stairwell, the reality was more appalling than they could have imagined. The boys had diligently searched every possible hiding spot among the rows of cars, weaving through the shadows that offered potential cover. It was only upon entering the stairwell that they came across the disturbing tableau. As they turned the corner, the dimly outlined figures of the men startled them. Every instinct urged them to run. Yet they resolved to confront the situation. They could not leave the girl in peril. Horror and revulsion momentarily paralyzed them as they took in the scene before them. Arnold admitted his initial hesitation about how to intervene. Nevertheless, it wasn't long before they sprang into action, trying to pry the men away from the girl. Enraged by the disruption, the men had not anticipated any resistance. As the taller man decided to withdraw, dismissing the scenario, his cohort followed suit. Nina, recounting the incident later, described how one man arrogantly pushed him aside with a smirk that seemed to declare his invincibility. Unable to just watch such wrongdoing, the boys were adamant about not letting the men simply escape. As the culprits attempted their escape, they noticed 3 boys hot on their trail. One of the boys remained behind to console the distressed girl, while his companions doggedly chased the men, quickly narrowing the gap between them. Their goal was to prevent the men from dodging responsibility for their actions. Meanwhile, in the active streets of Calgary, a group of boys found themselves embroiled in a tense pursuit. They dashed across the cityscape, closely followed by their pursuers who left them no chance to escape. Concurrently, Officer Donor was on maximum alert. He had just gotten a vital tip about a suspect he had been closely monitoring, who was now spotted near the Chinook Center with an associate. With determination, Officer Donor made his way through the upscale neighborhoods of Calgary's southwestern areas, his vigilant eyes spotting the large outline of the building against the dusk sky. He promptly called for reinforcements. The scene intensified when Officer Donor and the teenagers unexpectedly met at his parked vehicle. The gang leader, trapped, opted for a last stand. In a bold move, he grabbed a skateboard from one of the boys and used it as a weapon to ward off his pursuers. Despite the charged atmosphere, he failed to gauge his precarious situation. Officer Donor was only a few feet away. Before the gang leader could harm the boys, Officer Donor subdued and arrested him with a quick tackle. By the time more officers arrived, the accomplice had slipped away into the darkness. The boys, seeing the police car arrive, instinctively ran off. They raced back to the parking lot, where they discovered their friend comforting the girl who had just endured a terrifying ordeal. Unaware, they had just encountered a notorious gang leader. Relieved that the girl was safe, they headed home. But their troubles were not over yet. They soon started receiving ominous phone calls. Filled with dread and uncertainty, they were hesitant to pick up, fearing repercussions for their actions or worse, that the gang leader had gotten hold of their personal details. As the calls continued, they realized they needed to face whatever consequences were coming. They decided to confront the situation bravely. Police Chief Roger Chaffin, who was also aware of the situation, prepared to provide support and ensure the safety of everyone involved. The man had been trying to get in touch with the boys to show his appreciation for their heroic deeds. Unfortunately, the boys misunderstood the purpose of his calls, thinking they might be in trouble for their involvement in the altercation. When they eventually connected, The boys were both relieved and nervous to find out that the man they had assisted in capturing was a prominent member of the infamous FOB gang, which had been causing disturbances in Calgary for many years. The FOB gang was notorious for its criminal endeavors, and capturing a key member marked a significant triumph for the local authorities. Initially confused about the chief's intentions, the boys were eventually hailed as heroes, their brave actions enhancing the safety and security of their community. The grim realities of the gang's activities shocked the boys as they reflected on the dangers the young girl they had rescued faced. The Calgary police had been tracking a specific individual linked to these criminal acts for months, but he had always evaded capture. Once in custody and interrogated, he revealed critical information about his associates, from their addresses to a comprehensive rundown of their offenses, exposing the gang's network and operations. Officer Donor was overwhelmed by this breakthrough. At last, he had solid leads to dismantle the criminal gangs that had troubled Calgary. Much of this success was due to the bravery of the 4 young boys. The question then arose, how could the police adequately thank these young heroes, to acknowledge their gallant efforts and their role in the rescue of the young girl? The 4 boys were invited to the Chief of Police's award gala. This gesture was meant to honor their service to the community. All 4 boys agreed that they had acted as anyone with a sense of human decency would have in such a situation. They resolved to continue trusting their instincts as much as they trusted their skateboards in the future. Consider if you found yourself in a similar situation. Would you follow your intuition? Or would you walk away? What these young individuals did was not just an act of incredible bravery but also a testament to their character. Confronting an adult who radiates authority is no small feat, and the potential consequences for the girl had they ignored their gut feelings are frightening to contemplate. This situation required immense bravery. However, this instance is not unique. Incidents like this happen more often than one would expect. Our communities are brimming with unsung heroes, ordinary individuals who readily intervene when they sense someone is in trouble or at risk. These people respond with quiet determination, epitomizing true valor and a spirit of community. After watching this story, how do you feel? Feel free to share with us in the comments section below. And then there is another similar warm story. Let's continue to see, overwhelmed and confused. Lori, a committed physician and mother, was at a loss to understand why each nanny she employed left abruptly, one after another. Motivated by her worries, she chose to set up a camera in her son's bedroom. On a morning shrouded in clouds, Lori arrived home following a demanding overnight shift at the hospital. Her eyes, heavy from fatigue, struggled to remain open after a night dedicated to caring for her patients at a pace only those in the medical field could sustain. Oh God! It feels so good to be home. She exhaled in relief as she dropped her briefcase and coat onto the sofa, yearning to collapse into the cushions, shut her eyes, clear her mind, and succumb to a deep, restorative sleep. However, her brief respite was abruptly interrupted when she was met by her nanny, Anne, who seemed exceptionally distressed and fearful. Mrs. Lori, I need to talk to you, and stuttered, her voice quaking with urgency. Lori's concern immediately turned to her child. What's wrong? Is Sam okay? She inquired, her heart racing as she sprang from the sofa and shook her head, indicating that her son was unharmed, yet confessed there was a different problem. It's not Samuel. He's okay. But, well, there's something happening in his room that you need to be aware of. The young woman articulated with difficulty, visibly shaken. Look, Mrs. Lori, I really care for Sam and you, but I can't stay in this job. I quit, and declared resolutely. Taken aback, Lori demanded more information. What do you mean? Why are you quitting? Tell me what happened tonight. She pressed, her voice heavy with worry. Anne, with her belongings already gathered, paused, her eyes downcast as if she herself was struggling to believe her own words. It's not just tonight, ma'am. It's every night. There are bizarre occurrences that I can't explain. All I know is that I can't stay here any longer. I'm sorry. Anne confessed, her tone both earnest and fraught with fear. A shiver ran down Lori's spine as a sense of dread began to build within her. Standing at the door, the young nanny continued. I really don't know how to describe it. There are noises, movements. I feel like we're not alone here. As the nanny's expression transformed into one of sheer terror. And wasn't alone, she was the latest in a string of 6 nannies who had resigned in recent months, each citing the same mysterious reasons for their abrupt departures. As Lori grappled with the unsettling news and had shared, a deep unease took root within her. This doesn't make sense. What on earth is happening, she pondered. A mix of fear and resolve stirring within her as she decided to get to the bottom of these strange events. Feeling a tumultuous mix of anger and distress, Lori stood up abruptly and made her way to her son's room. Her thoughts were blurred by fatigue and the shocking revelations she had just heard. As she entered the quiet room, a stark contrast to the disturbing account from Anne, she found her son Samuel sleeping tranquilly. Lori paused, taking a moment to gather her thoughts and confront the eerie situation. A sense of foreboding began to overwhelm her. Not just for her son's immediate safety but also because of the enigmatic uncertainty that now hung in the air. Determined to discover the truth, Lori went back to her home office and sat down at her laptop with firm resolve. After several nannies had resigned, each disturbed by unexplained occurrences during the night, she had installed cameras in Samuel's room. It was now time to examine the footage and uncover what had been scaring them away. With a click, her laptop screen sprang to life, showing the recorded events from the previous night. At first glance, the footage seemed normal. It depicted the nanny settling Samuel into his crib and the room slowly growing quiet under the soft glow of a nightlight, which cast gentle shadows across the walls. However, as the night wore on, the atmosphere shifted. The camera captured faint, unsettling sounds, hinting at a mysterious presence moving around. Initially, Lori thought it might be the wind or a system glitch. But the disturbances became increasingly distinct, climaxing with objects moving on their own, a book falling from a shelf, a ball rolling across the floor without being touched. When the nanny re-entered the room around midnight, her expression was one of absolute fright. As Lori watched, her body tensed, witnessing the nanny's terror. A chill of realization raced up her spine as Lori grasped the cause of the previous nanny's departures. Driven away by terror from the inexplicable happenings now before her eyes. For a brief moment, Lori doubted her own mental state, questioning the reality of the eerie occurrences displayed on her monitor. Amidst this chaos, her son Samuel remained joyfully oblivious, his calm actions strangely syncing with the lively movements of the surrounding objects. Lori's gaze stayed fixed on the screen, frantically seeking a rational explanation or a hint to unravel these eerie events. Just when she was about to lose hope, a fleeting movement on the monitor caught her attention, causing her heart to race. It was a pivotal instant that could redefine everything she believed. A shadow darted across the view of the camera, subtle yet alarming enough to put her on high alert. What was that? She pondered, her mind teeming with possible theories. She pressed the rewind button to catch another look at the shadow, but it slipped by too swiftly, almost mocking her. Lori contemplated the other peculiar incidents in the house. especially in Samuel's nursery. What had the nanny observed and opted to keep secret, overwhelmed by dread and uncertainty? Lori knew she needed to respond. Yet she struggled to confront such an elusive adversary. One she hardly comprehended. As she considered her next move, a thought started to take shape. Perhaps there was a logical explanation for the mystifying events she was witnessing. Lori, a woman with a foundation in science, was not inclined to believe in ghosts. Despite the perplexing occurrences before her, resolute to uncover the truth, she decided to investigate further and fully understand the enigmatic events in Samuel's nursery. As she brooded over the implications of the recordings and their significance for her son, Lori realized that to comprehend the odd happenances in the nursery, it was essential to revisit the past. She recalled everything from the night of Sam's birth. He was born on a stormy Friday, the 13th. A detail vividly imprinted in her memory, along with the blend of joy, fear, and anticipation she experienced that day. It was her first child. And significantly, she faced the birthing process with a mix of emotions. She sensed an eerie presence as though she was constantly being observed. Despite her short tenure, Beatrice's departure added to Lori's frustration. Lori, a doctor familiar with the clinical aspects of childbirth, found herself navigating the uncharted waters of motherhood for the first time. A journey that was unexpectedly profound. Samuel's arrival filled her with an immense sense of happiness. Upon their return, the home that she and her late husband had chosen was now infused with fresh significance. The nursery, recently adorned with toys and books, stood ready for moments of happiness and exploration. What was once an empty space had been transformed into a lively sanctuary for their son to play and rest. Yet, Lori was troubled by an odd feeling each time she entered Samuel's nursery. It seemed as if a peculiar energy pervaded the room. An indescribable presence that suggested she wasn't entirely alone. Initially, all was well. But the atmosphere shifted when Lori ended her maternity leave and resumed her work, necessitating the employment of a nanny. Strange incidents began to occur as Samuel aged. Nannies reported toys shifting positions independently. Unexplained noises filled the space, and a general sense of unease dominated the room. Nanny after nanny left hurriedly, each unnerved by the unsettling phenomena within the nursery. Lori grew increasingly exasperated. Could it really be that none of these nannies are suitable? Must they all resign? She pondered in frustration. Each new nanny arrived full of optimism, only to leave soon after, overwhelmed by the mysterious nighttime happenings in the nursery. Marissa, the first nanny, lasted merely 2 weeks before confiding in Lori about the enigmatic movements of the toys. Dar. Lori, I'm certain that the teddy bears I arranged neatly keep relocating themselves. When I return, they're scattered across the floor, she reported, clearly distressed. Before resigning, Lori, rational and grounded, dismissed these claims as mere flights of fancy. There's nothing amiss with my child. This girl is simply overreacting, she concluded, vexed by the ordeal. Following Marissa, Beatrice came aboard, only to depart even quicker than her predecessor. She insisted that it felt as though eyes were constantly upon her. An unsettling feeling that led to her swift resignation. Something uncanny seemed to dwell within the house. Each time a nanny quit, Lori's frustration and bewilderment deepened. Why do they all sense and witness these phenomena? She pondered, striving to stay logical amidst the turmoil. Claudia, the third nanny, unnerved the doctor significantly. She recounted hearing whispers and laughter at night, originating from thin air. Mrs. Lori, it feels as though another child is present in the room. Yet I only ever see Samuel," she confessed. Terrified, Lori started to suspect the house might be involved but was reluctant to accept any supernatural explanations. Subsequent nannies shared similar experiences: inexplicable noises, toys shifting positions, and a suffocating atmosphere as soon as the lights were extinguished. Each account only added to the doctor's vexation, as she failed to pinpoint the cause. Fed up, she resolved to set up a camera in her son's bedroom. This time, if any of these girls claim my son is a ghost or some supernatural entity, I'll have proof to refute them, she determined. Yet, the last nanny, Anne, appeared more composed and mature. Lori had hoped and would be different, but her hopes were dashed when Anne tendered her resignation one morning. Her words lingered in Lori's mind. Odd occurrences transpire in Samuel's room. As Lori wrestled with the disturbing enigma surrounding her child's nursery. She began to doubt whether she was overlooking or denying something vital. With the departure of the sixth nanny and the security footage of her baby's room now in her possession, Lori knew it was time to face whatever strange or fearsome reality awaited. Upon reviewing the footage, Lori was baffled to find no rational explanation. The nanny's accounts seemed all the more credible as she observed objects mysteriously fall from shelves and shadowy figures dart across the camera. The entire scene was surreal. Determined to uncover the truth, Lori decided to spend the night in her son's room. "I won't leave until I witness with my own eyes what I saw on the camera," she resolved, eager to directly experience what had been reported. Despite her determination, a wave of fear washed over her, nearly engulfing her as she sat in an armchair, watching her son slumber peacefully in his crib. The passage of time felt interminable, each tick of the clock amplifying her anxiety. Time seemed to crawl as minutes morphed into hours. And still, nothing out of the ordinary occurred. Lori started to question if the strange events were just products of the nanny's collective imagination. Yet the unexplained audio recordings haunted her thoughts, compelling her to remain alert. As the clock neared midnight, fatigue clouded Lori's perception, and she briefly drifted into sleep. Suddenly, a loud clatter jolted her awake. A children's book had fallen off a shelf. "Oh my God!" Lori exclaimed, quickly surveying the room while her heart pounded fiercely. Her son lay still, undisturbed. Her confusion grew when another toy dropped, escalating her fear. Instinctively, Lori grabbed her son, speculating whether his dreams could be manifesting in reality. She considered waking him, hoping it might stop the disturbances. Yet the eerie incidents continued. A vague, shadowy figure flitted across the room, barely visible in the weak light. "Who's there? What's happening? What are you doing?" Lori called out, her voice trembling with terror. Another shadow flickered past. Noises came from within the walls. "Good Lord," she whispered, feeling a chill of terror crawl up her spine. She was enveloped by the feeling of an invisible presence, a missing piece of the puzzle she couldn't yet piece together. Fear gripped her, but Lori's resolve to discover the truth spurred her into action. Holding her child close, she bravely turned on the light, determined to uncover whatever was hidden in the shadows. Her determination was unwavering. She needed to understand the enigmatic occurrences in her home, regardless of how terrifying they might be. Lori meticulously examined every corner of Samuel's room, intent on finding the origin of the odd events she had recently faced. She rifled through toys, books, and even peeked into the depths of the closet, looking for any clues that could illuminate the mystifying situation. Among these was the fleeting sight of a small figure that had especially baffled her. Then, in the stillness, A faint whisper-like sound caught her ear. Intrigued, Lori gently placed little Sam into his crib and rushed to grab a flashlight. She moved the chest of drawers, where she usually kept the baby's clothes, and traced the soft noise to a small opening in the wall hidden in a corner of the room. The house's wallpaper had initially disguised the gap. It was only now that Lori noticed a hole had been discreetly covered up by a mix of curiosity and wariness. Lori activated her flashlight and cautiously peeled back a piece of the wallpaper to examine the enigmatic gap more closely. The revelation inside nearly made her lose her balance in shock. Her eyes opened wide in disbelief at the discovery, which shed light on why all of Samuel's previous nannies had quit so abruptly. Too frightened to even share their reasons. "No way," Lori whispered to herself, a laugh slipping out as the stress melted away. Nestled in the shadows, a tiny family of squirrels had taken refuge, seemingly drawn by the warmth of the home. These small animals had found their way into the baby's room via a small crack in the wall. All the fears and the eerie aura surrounding her son's room were simply the antics of these inquisitive squirrels. The shadows, the noises, the moving objects, all were the antics of these little trespassers. Relieved and almost amused by the ordinary and mundane nature of what had seemed like a supernatural and frightening occurrence, Lori chuckled. The haunting that had terrified the nannies and led to many sleepless nights was merely a handful of tiny creatures seeking refuge and food. The following day, Lori took steps to address the issue. She got in touch with wildlife experts who carefully moved the squirrel family to a secure location and sealed off the entry point to prevent future interruptions. She eagerly anticipated sharing this humorous story with the next babysitter, sure that it would alleviate any worries about nighttime mysteries in Samuel's room. With the puzzle solved, Lori felt a substantial burden lift from her shoulders. The squirrels, now safely relocated, no longer disrupted the calm and tranquility of her home. She smiled, contemplating how scenarios can appear so alarming in the shadows yet so harmless in the light of day. A few days later, as she recounted the entire incident to her new nanny, they both shared a hearty laugh. Life at the doctor's residence had resumed its usual pace, all thanks to the revelation of the small, furry cause behind the big, scary enigma. Little Sam was as joyful and untroubled as ever, and the nanny quickly settled into the daily life of the household. Lori felt a profound sense of relief having solved the mystery that had been a source of worry, and she could now proceed with her duties free from any residual anxiety. Through her experience, she gleaned an important insight: she should avoid jumping to the worst conclusions, particularly in scenarios she didn't fully comprehend. During the evenings when she settled Samuel into bed, Lori would look around the now peaceful room and ponder the strangely captivating essence of life. A simple squirrel had emerged as the main character in a narrative that resembled a plot from a thriller movie. With the enigma solved, Lori was at last able to experience peaceful nights, no longer tormented by the fear and confusion that once haunted her. These formerly restless nights would eventually evolve into enthralling tales to narrate to her son as he matured. Do you have any insights after watching the above 3 stories? Feel free to tell us in the comments sections below. That's all about our today's stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe our channel. See you next time.